Hi everyone, this video is a recap of Nuix presentation at the 2024 Legal Week, in which we showed how Nuix adaptive security can be used by attorneys conducting internal investigations for large enterprises. And what we've shown is how some of the priorities that investigators have, attorneys have conducting these investigations are supported directly with features in the Nuix endpoint product. Hope you enjoy this. Please reach out to me directly at hoke.smith@nuix.com if you'd like more information. Now with that, I'm going to turn off my webcam and jump into the presentation. Now, before I get into specific features and functions that are useful for investigations, I wanted to just set the stage with some of the things that we hear from customers who are conducting these investigations about what they're trying to accomplish. And first and foremost, internal counsel looking to understand the facts. And that is, certainly to be able to advise the business around what the legal exposure that whatever the behavior is represents. It's also to prepare for interactions with opposing counsel in the case of litigation or with regulators, such that there's some control over the narrative, or at least not loss of control over the narrative, because our customer has mastered the facts about what has actually occurred. The second is, of course, being able to remedy the conduct, to make advice about how this kind of thing can be prevented in the future. And then there's the need to demonstrate that due diligence, that due care has been taken with the security of the organization, and that is memorialized or recorded in some way so that we can demonstrate that we actually did respond in a timely fashion. And protecting the business, certainly protecting leaders against allegations of complicity is a factor where we just want to make sure that no one can ever allege that the system was blinking orange or blinking red, and there were all these indicators and leadership ignored them, maybe deliberately. To stave that off, we want to be able to show that a comprehensive response was mounted as soon as indicators surfaced. And then finally, there's just, certainly a desire to promote a high ethical standard and live up to the values of the organization. So with that as context, I would like to consider a scenario. This is an alleged intellectual property theft scenario where a user is using their personal Gmail account to steal information and sell it. And so I'd like to consider some of the different goals that internal investigators typically have and their objectives, and then show how the Nuix product directly supports those objectives. So firstly, let's look at conducting document review in advance of discussing the allegations with the subject or with other witnesses. One of the things that typically is going to happen is a review of email or review of Teams or other kinds of chat information or other electronic communications that are relevant to the allegations. One of the common challenges is that the user may be using communication channels that are outside the purview of traditional security or IT, like a personal Gmail account or one of innumerable web services that are out there that people can easily share information with. So I'd like to show you, to start with, how that could be with Nuix Adaptive Security. And we'll look at the Adaptive Security interface here. And, in our demonstration scenario, the allegation is against a user named Vito Intaglia. And so we'll begin by reviewing a little bit of history here and seeing that there was an upload with a browser of classified data. And in this case, classified encompasses things like classification markings on documents indicating that they're confidential or proprietary, as well as content that indicates intellectual property. So in response to potential upload by the user, what was probably an upload by the user, this file was actually collected. To take a first look at this, I'll right-click, view the alert. And that's going to provide me with a report on the intellectual property that the uploaded file contained. And it's going to do that by comparing regular expressions to the document content, and found that the term graphene, graphite oxide, matched on content. And for each of the matches, we can see the text on either side of the match, and that proprietary and confidential and the term polymer also matched. And then we can also look at the initial content of the document. This is the first, basically the initial introductory portion, showing me the header of the file as well as the first text here. And so this is going to give me enough to determine that this was indeed a document that contained company data. It's not something personal that was uploaded, and going to give me reason to take a deeper look at this. One of the things that is going to be relevant is, of course, the name of the file, and that's easily found in another portion of the alert. We can see here that the file name is graphene review blah blah blah, and that the location that it was uploaded from, or that the browser opened it from, was the user's desktop. So also tell me that the size of it was about 3.5 megs. So from here, I might choose to expand this and learn more about this behavior. And that kind of brings me to the next investigative goal, which is to take a phased approach. So we don't want to begin, casting a wide net. There's, certainly risk that comes, with exposing other things that are outside the initial scope. So we started there, by looking at the stolen document that was uploaded with Gmail. But to expand the investigation slightly, we can look at screenshots that were taken around the time of the upload to see if we can identify who the recipient was of this file that the user sent out with Gmail. And if that information is indicative of risk or indicative of, the need for a more expanded investigation, then we can look at other correspondence with that same recipient and see what we can learn about that. So let's take a look again at the adaptive console and go back to our indicator that user uploaded classified data with a browser. We certainly could examine the file that was uploaded by viewing the alert and checking out collection here. This will allow me to actually download the full content of the Word document and save it locally and open it up and examine it. And I'm not going to do that here. It's pretty standard, straightforward stuff. But that wouldn't tell me like who the file was sent to. To do that, I'll look at screenshots that were taken around the time of the incident. So those are found attached to the alert under screenshots. And you can see that adaptive security is able to screenshot based on user behavior and do a very narrow or fairly focused capture of user behavior. In this case, what we have is a short period of time before the user attached or uploaded the file and a short period of time after that happened. So I'll just play these screenshots back like a movie here, and we'll see the user typing the message to the recipient, ed.manning@mail.com, and then attaching the file. And then we'll see a bit of additional sort of screenshotting that occurred after the user typed or after the user uploaded the file. And that's going to give me enough to see that who the recipient was. The message content tells me that refers to a third party passing the information on to another party, and makes reference to the fact that the information is restricted within the company and asks the recipient to delete it. So this is going to certainly suggest to us that the person knew that they were sharing sensitive information, reveal that the recipient appears to be sort of an intermediary in the transaction, and lead us to want to expand out beyond to learn more about the recipient of this message, edmanning@mail.com. And we can get all that from the screenshots. We don't have any way really of logging what's happening within the Gmail, of course, but we can see from our screenshots, what's going on. And to expand to learn more about, the correspondence between the subject of the investigation and Ed Manning, the recipient, we can collect additional data from the endpoint. And to do that, we'll use the Query DBR feature. Now, this allows us to grab a range of different log information from the endpoint and bring it back to the server. In this case, we'll grab key log data. And one of the interesting things about the approach within adaptive security is that it does give you the ability to leave the key log data on the endpoint such that no one sees it, no one has access to it, unless there's a requirement to, like we saw here, to retrieve that information for examination or for review. And so now we can begin to look at the keystroke data over the last, whatever period we're interested in, and we could go and see, what else has Vito been, what other information has he exchanged with Ed Manning. And so there's certainly, a variety of different keystroke data that's of interest to us. It's showing us some additional correspondence between our subject Vito and Ed in Gmail, but we can also see that there's correspondence with the same recipient over an entirely different channel, which is the Telegram messaging application. So the keystroke events carry with them a process name to tell me, what application this was typed into, a window title, which tells me a bit more about, below the application level, what the user was doing, what document they might have been in, or what website they were at, and then the key data is what was actually typed in. This is all attached to an individual user, so if we did have a system that had multiple users who had access or were logged into it, we would be able to differentiate by this user column here. And again, this information can be left on the endpoint and retrieved, only in the event that there's a need to dig deeper into user behavior. Now, sometimes this is the only way to know what the user has done with sensitive data when they're accessing resources that are particularly resources that are on the internet that there is no other visibility into or no ability to log against, or they're using applications that they've been able to download that are doing things like encrypting traffic from end to end. And this provides us with some way to establish accountability, even if the user has employed those kinds of tools on their work computer. So hopefully you got a sense there of how the Nuix Adaptive product gives you the ability to start with a narrow approach and focusing in on the data, looking for sensitive data, and then only if necessary to expand out and look at additional aspects of user behavior. Now, the next thing I wanted to address is the need to present selective documents to witnesses or to people that are being interviewed. And one of the most powerful tools to do that is the screenshots of the user's desktop. This is valuable, certainly when, in a discussion with a user where being able to show the screenshots is more powerful in sort of surmounting the person's tendency to deny the activity. It's a little bit easier to confront them with a screenshot than it is with an Excel spreadsheet. But this is also very useful internally in building support to take action in a case like this, where there may be a need to get people from HR or other compliance organizations internally on board with taking action. And the screenshot provides a powerful way to do that. So moving on then to a couple of more priorities that we see. One is to manage the risk of additional disclosure. So in certain cases, we'll have an employee who has become very disgruntled, and there's a risk that they're going to attempt other methods to either disclose data to the media or to the public or to steal it. And so the capability here is to, with Nuix Adaptive, is to initiate monitoring in real time to alert on attempts to steal data, and not just on the same sort of strategies that have been employed in the past, because what we do see users doing is changing their behavior to evade controls. And we're able to monitor that and detect those, as well as the original effort to, or original method that data was used or method the user used rather to exfiltrate the data. So as an example of that, you'll recall that we started with a user who copied this file, graphene review, or just uploaded it to Gmail. But if instead of copying the entire file, they copied a portion of it into a Gmail message, or they copied data from this document into, which has, carries this obvious name on it, to something subtler like, some innocuously named file, then we would still be able to pick that up and to even alert on it in real time. So when I pasted the information into the Gmail message from the Word document, because it contained the term graphene in it, the endpoint agent alerted on that and initiated a brief series of screenshots again. So to see that, we see here as I click through, as soon as I pasted that information into the Gmail message, an event was created. So we actually just logged this, and then the endpoint agent alerted on it and created some screenshots against it as well. So we have a way to guard against this risk that the user that is under investigation is potentially going to steal data. And that would be just one example of the monitoring and even control that can be undertaken. So we might choose, in this case, that to manage our risk of additional disclosure, we're not just going to alert on additional activity, but we're going to block that. And the endpoint agent does give us that tool as well. So our investigator, will also need to produce a report on the investigation where we get an assessment of sort of the risk from a liability standpoint. We're building a case against prosecution if we're interacting with the regulator who's threatening that, and certainly want to be able to recommend corrective action internally to what steps can we take to prevent this from happening in the future. The way that the Nuix product supports this is by producing a comprehensive timeline of the user activity and accompanying that with screenshots. So what that is going to look like is a saved investigation like this, where we can go back and put together sort of an event by event or blow by blow record of what's transpired. And this will show, each time that graphene review document, all of the user activity around that document. And it's going to show me, this is the upload with Chrome, activity for the Chrome upload, the attempt to share the information via the Telegram messaging application. And then this is a incident here of copying a different file to a removable media device. So there's a very defensible, sort of forensically defensible log of all that activity that is generated by the endpoint agent. And that spans across the file system activity there, as well as the clipboard activity. So this would just show me that, from the application Word to the application Chrome, the user pasted, this text, and we can see that the destination window for that text was a tab with my Gmail address in it. There's also information around print jobs. So this is showing a print to, looks like a print to PDF of the same file. And then of course the keystroke data. So taken together, this allows us to assemble, a comprehensive timeline of the user's behavior, which is going to back up our final report, providing information about the level of liability and arming us really to deal with external parties. Now, the last thing I have in here is around end user privacy. And you might be saying, well, how does this support privacy? And I think you really have to consider, you have to consider two things when you think about privacy. And the first is that, the only reason that we would go down a route like this is because we got an indicator that sensitive data that is places the entire enterprise, potentially places the enterprise at risk or brings in risk, was in play, and that this activity took place, on the organization's computing assets. It's not the person's personal stuff. So, given those two things, how are we protecting end user privacy? And the primary way that Nuix Adaptive enables that is by focusing data collection on the risk indicators. So you recall that when we took screenshots of the user's desktop, we were screenshotting just the activity that was relevant to us and that was indicative of risk. So as we go back to, sort of the initial chain of events that got our attention, you'll recall that it was the upload of the sensitive data with the browser that kicked off the screenshots, and that we captured screenshots just around that activity. So whereas historically, in a scenario like this where we had an allegation, it might require deployment of continuous screenshotting of everything the user was doing or some other means of surveilling their activity. But with this, we can focus only on the high-risk behavior. And so whatever they're doing in Gmail, maybe it's personal business, maybe they're doing things related to their family. We don't care. But when it's touching sensitive data, when it's touching the company's intellectual property or other information, maybe including data about our customers, that's where there's a need to apply greater scrutiny. And so the user privacy protection comes in by being much more surgical and precise about what is collected from the end user's desktop and what data we bring back. All right, so hopefully that gave you a good sense of what the Nuix Adaptive product is able to do when it comes to the investigative goals that are typically going to apply in an internal investigation. And again, if you would like more information, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. We'd love to hear from you. And thanks very much for watching this video.